Hello, I'm Bryony Franklin. I'm a theme lead within the NIHR Imperial Patient Safety Translational Research Centre and Professor of Medication Safety at UCL School of Pharmacy. It's my pleasure today to present this work on behalf of my co-authors. These are listed on the slide and include two lay partners, John and Jill, as well as a group of researchers of different backgrounds, including clinicians of different professions. The research I'm presenting focuses on understanding the unintended consequences of new healthcare technologies aimed at supporting patient safety. So why did we do this work? Well, I think it's fair to say that technology is everywhere. Like most people, I rely on my computer for so many things, and I would really struggle to manage without my smartphone. And I absolutely love my smartwatch. And of course, it's just the same in healthcare, with technologies continually being developed and introduced, often with the goal of supporting patient safety. For example, we now have electronic health records with a huge range of types of clinical decision support, electronic prescribing systems, smart infusion pumps with dose error reduction software, robotic dispensing machines, various apps and monitoring devices, and so on. However, like most things when we introduce them, there can also be unintended as well as intended consequences. Sometimes the unintended consequences are positive, but often they are negative, and it's perhaps these that are of more concern. Now, there have been a number of frameworks and toolkits introduced with the idea of helping with the introduction of new technologies, but these have typically focused on implementation issues, and they're typically focused more at higher level managerial staff who perhaps are less the people working hands-on with the technology on a day-to-day basis. And most existing toolkits and frameworks have also not included the perspectives of patients and carers within the healthcare setting. And finally, most existing frameworks tend to focus on one specific type of technology, for example, electronic prescribing systems in the hospital setting. So we felt that there was a need to understand the different types of unintended negative consequences that can occur, particularly those related to patient safety, and particularly taking into account the views of patients and the public, as well as frontline healthcare professionals. The hope is that by understanding these types of unintended consequences, we can then develop a framework to help mitigate those unintended consequences in the future. So, what did we aim to do? So first of all, we wanted to identify and classify the types of unintended consequences that may occur when new healthcare technologies are introduced, and then to inform the development of some form of tool or framework for predicting, identifying, and most importantly, mitigating and preventing technology-related risks within healthcare. So what did we do? First of all, we held 5 focus groups, collectively with 11 healthcare providers and 29 patients and carers in total. The first 3 of these focus groups were mixed, healthcare providers and patients and carers, and the final 2 were patients and carers only, to provide more opportunity for input from a much wider range of perspectives. The focus groups were all held on the Zoom platform during the second half of 2021, and we used virtual sticky notes to help generate and capture ideas. All the focus groups were facilitated by 2 members of the research team, many of the focus groups included a lay partner in that facilitation team, and they were all recorded and then transcribed. Participants gave informed consent, and the study was approved by Imperial College Ethics Committee. So during the focus groups, the participants were asked about the unintended consequences of healthcare technologies, following a brief introductory discussion about the different kinds of technologies that they had experience of. We then discussed how those unintended consequences might have been identified and predicted, and how they might be mitigated in future work. Following the transcribing of the focus groups, we conducted an iterative, inductive, thematic analysis, which was done in parallel by groups of 2 of our research team and by our lay partners. We then discussed and combined and synthesized all of those analyses and perspectives to agree the final set of themes. So what did we find? Well, we had 5 main themes. These are shown down the left-hand side of this slide. The first concerned the effects on equity, and I've included a quote here at the top of the slide, largely concerning digital equity with concerns about access to technology, or more specifically, suitably designed technology to take into account a more inclusive approach. There were some comments that digital tools could actually help with access and reduce inequalities, such as by allowing remote consultations for those unable to travel. But in general, the concerns were about many technologies actually exacerbating health inequalities. The second theme was around increased end user burden, whether this was on the part of healthcare providers or the patients and carers. The third was about the impact of the loss of human side to healthcare interactions in terms of the subtleties that you pick up in a face-to-face interaction. And again, the quote on the slide illustrates an example of that, but also about losing the kind of relationship building that can often be much easier with face-to-face interactions. The fourth theme was around over-reliance on technology, with the impacts there, both sort of psychological reliance and also then not having safety netting for when the technology itself failed, and perhaps not being clear what to do if something didn't work or the technology stopped working. And the final set of themes were around the sort of governance, about responsibilities, and also about issues to do with data security. So just unpicking a few more of our findings a little more, there was a cross-cutting issue around communication being less good as expected, issues around an increase in complexity, and interestingly, the unintended consequences seemed similar for technologies aimed at healthcare professionals and healthcare providers, and those aimed at patients and carers. Strategies for mitigating these issues in the future included co-design, with a really important thing about real-world testing amongst the anticipated end users, patients, carers, frontline healthcare providers, and clear communication about roles and responsibilities. Finally, though, we do need to note that many of these issues related to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular on virtual technologies, which may affect generalizability of these findings. So we're next going to introduce a toolkit to identify and mitigate these strategies that will be explored in further focus groups, followed by evaluation in clinical practice. So thank you for watching. If you've got any comments or questions, do come and find me over coffee if you're at the conference in person. And otherwise, I've put my email addresses here on the slide. It would be great to hear from you.